Hello everyone, my name is Linda Hayes, and today I want to talk about the difference between garage suites and basement suites as I invest in both of those. So a little history on me is that I've been investing in real estate for about 10 years, primarily in new construction, and all my current properties have either garage suites or basement suites. So yesterday I had a call from an investor who's interested in doing one of those, either a basement suite or a garden suite. So we went through a lot of details on why one would be better than the other. And I did have this investor reach out through my builder network from one of the builders I've built with in the past. So in terms of why I started investing in basement suites, I'll talk about that a little bit. So when I first decided to buy real estate in Edmonton, I found a house in Lewis Estates on the West End. To build that house, the same as a show home, it would be $250,000, and that was a 1,500 square foot house with a detached garage. At the time, being an accountant, of course, I did a detailed rental budget, put in the numbers. Rent at that point was probably $1,200 to $1,300 a month only, and I had made a fairly large down payment, and the property was going to cash flow, so I went ahead with that purchase. Fast forward to 2007, the economy went crazy. By the time I took possession of the house, I actually got, I think it was $1,400 rent at that time in 2007, and rent kept going up from there, where it's kind of topped out now for that type of property to be about $1,800 a month rent, plus the tenant pays their utilities. So now when we're trying to buy these kind of properties in Edmonton, it doesn't work from an investment standpoint. The price of these for the same type of property in the same neighborhood, they would be about $370,000. And that just doesn't work well from a cash flow perspective. So what I started looking at instead is basement suites. So in 2014, I decided that was the next logical move, is to take one of these same type of houses, put a basement suite in it. Thought at first it would be easy to do, and then I realized that in new neighborhoods, there was no builders that were doing houses with basement suites. So I talked to, luckily I found a great salesperson, Marie, and she said, well, we don't do basement suites, but we can rough in everything you need. You just tell us what you want roughed in the basement, and then you can finish it when you get possession. So this took me countless hours of research to figure out what the fire code rules were, all this kind of stuff. It took quite some time, and then I told her what I needed to add in. She charged me for all the rough-ins. Once I got possession, I actually used all their same tradespeople. So I had the cabinet guy, the same cabinet guy come in, the same plumber come in, everything just to connect the kitchen. So basically it was only the kitchen that I had to add afterwards. So I did the permits myself for that, did the basement suite, city came in and inspected, worked perfectly fine. At that point, the builder went, you're an accountant and you can do this, guess we should start doing it. So the next house I bought with them, one that I still own today, I actually talked to them about this build, and they said, well, we'll do a pilot where we do the full basement suite. So for them, it was quite a learning experience, and it went pretty successful, and now they build basement suite houses all the time, and lots of other builders in the area do it too. So think back to 2014, there was hardly any. Now they're all over the place. So the house with the basement suite, it was over 400, so quite a bit more, of course, than the single family house, but it's still cash flowed really nicely. And because our economy was doing well, I had no problem with this type of property. Once our economy got a little worse, however, things became a bit different. So the basement suite houses, suddenly there was a lot of rentals available. Tenants would be saying, well, no, I don't want to live in a main floor where I have to worry about my kids running around, disturbing the basement tenants. Other people didn't want to live in the basement because the windows were too small, things like that. So noise, sharing yards, all those things were kind of problems, and it became a lot harder to rent. Still rentable, but it was just harder than it had been when the economy was great. So then I thought, well, what else could I do? And I love looking at show homes. So I went to a neighborhood, Grease Spa in North Edmonton, and I found some builders that were building these products with garage suites. So they had a single family home, and then they, in the back alley, had a garage with a suite above it. I thought, this is a fantastic product. I love it. However, when I looked at the prices then, they just wouldn't cash flow, because in Grease Spa, the houses, I guess it was just too expensive overall. Put it in my rental budget. It just didn't work for numbers. So I thought, well, maybe their lots are more expensive. Their houses could be. So I started looking in West Edmonton, where I was already building with the same builder, and said, could you build me a garage suite? So, of course, because they had done basement suites successfully, they thought, why not? Let's get into the garage suite building market. So that changed things a lot in the neighborhood that I have my garage suites in, which is in Rosenthal in West Edmonton. So now, I haven't counted lately, but I'm guessing there's probably between 15 and 20 garage suite homes in Rosenthal now, and a lot of basement suite developments as well. So the reason, of course, moving to garage suites, the reason I liked it is as soon as I posted the first one for rent, nobody ever looked at the house and said, oh my God, there's someone living above my garage. I mean, the garage is farther away from their house than their next door neighbor is. So there was no worry about noise and other concerns. So the house ends up being a lot better, more rentable. And in addition, the garage suite, I mean, because it's above a garage, there's plenty of light, lots of big windows, and those rent very fast as well. So I had no problem renting them. So in terms of talking about the cost difference between a basement suite and a garage suite, because this is quite important, obviously. So to build a basement suite, on average, it costs around $60,000 in these properties that I'm talking about, whereas a garden suite costs about $140,000. So, I mean, that's a huge difference, and it makes your down payment a lot higher. So if you don't have the funds, obviously, to buy a garden suite with your property, then that's going to be a little bit hard. If you do, however, there are a lot of pros to the garden suite over the basement suite. So let's talk first about rents. So my full house with the garden suite, the ones in the west end of Edmonton, they rent for $1,800 excluding utilities. I have one house, the first one that the builder did the basement suite in for me. The rent on that main floor, which the house is pretty much the same type of house, the main floor rents for $1,575. So when you think $1,575 compared to $1,800, where the usable finished space is kind of the same for the tenant, that's quite a big difference. Also, the garden suite, they rent without utilities for about $1,200 to $1,300 a month, and the basement suites typically are around $900 to $1,000. So obviously, rent side on both the house and the suite is better on the garden suites. So the reason I did move to this, obviously, is because the rent is higher and the ease of getting tenants into the properties is a lot better. I also do find in the basement suited houses I've sold many over the years as well, I did have high tenant turnover in comparison to my garden suite properties. So my garden suite, I've had tenants renew year after year since 2017, whereas basement suites, oftentimes I would have people only stay for their first lease of 1 year or maybe 2 years. So it's been a lot more transient in the basement suites. And again, I think it's just because they want their own house. They want a full house. And you'll see a lot of ads on Kijiji saying full house wanted. My garden suite one would qualify for a full house rent for the house, so it works a lot better. So as long as you do have the funds to buy the house with the garden suite, this is definitely the way to go in my mind. And I've talked to a lot of investors in Calgary, a lot of my colleagues that I've met through real estate events, and they've also bought houses in Edmonton with garage suites, and I do help them show them, and they rent very easily. In my case, I do them as furnished rentals so that I have the flexibility of renting both on Airbnb and to more sort of medium-term people that are coming into Edmonton to work. But hopefully this gives you some information that might help you decide, do you want a house with a basement suite or do you want one with a garden suite? One other thing I was asked, I've been asked quite a bit, is can you do both a basement suite and a garden suite on your property in Edmonton? And that's an answer that's a bit complicated because it depends where you live. So if you have a house that's not in a new neighborhood, in an RF1, RF2, RF3 zone, you are allowed to have both. So you could have a basement suite and a garden suite. Again, some of the problems that I've had with renting the basement suites on the main floor, I would consider that. But one other thing I did in one of my properties is I actually put an in-law suite in the basement where it's not a full legal suite, but it has a kitchenette, it has a separate entry because there's a back stairwell, all approved by the city, and I just rent it to one family. So a lot of times families that have their parents living in the basement, they have an adult child living in the basement that wants independent living. But on those ones I can get rent usually around $2,200 a month. For those products, and of course the basement is a lot cheaper to develop when you're not doing a full legal suite with a separate furnace, etc. So I know I've given a lot of information here. Hopefully it helps you, but if you do have more questions, feel free to reach out to me through email or by phone. Thank you so much and have a great day.